I think probably the Native Americans were the first Christians, in that they believe a higher spirit, which is what is God, a higher spirit. What is God? He is the creator. And I guess when they refer to him as grandfather, he is the father of all. And I think that's why this old man sitting on top of his adobe meant when he said, we Indians could tell the white people how we live and what we believe, but they wouldn't believe us. I'm Charlene Benton, and I was born December the 10th, 1934, in Boca Chica, Oklahoma. I'm a proud Chocktaw Indian. And this is my story.
What was your early life like?
Well, when I was 3 months old, as I said, we lived in Boca Chica, Oklahoma, and our house burned down. So we moved to Texas, and from 3 months until now, I've always lived in Texas. Through the years, I've wanted all of my children to be registered in the Choctaw tribe, and have seen to it that each of my children have gotten registered. I want them to know that they are proud to be Choctaw people.
So you were telling us a minute ago about your great-grandfather and how it was for Native Americans back when you were a young lady, and how it was hard. What were you telling us about that a few minutes ago?
Well, Indians in Oklahoma were not treated with respect. I mean, people thought they were kind of ne'er-do-wells and
hard to explain it, huh?
And what?
It's hard to explain it, isn't it?
It is.
You're not trying to be derogatory, you're just trying to say it without being, with it just how it was. They were just looked down upon.
My grandfather went to an Indian school, and my father went to the same Indian school. It was called Old Goodland. The white people didn't allow them to have long hair or speak the Indian language. They made them learn English, and they treated like heathens, kind of. And my father was not proud to be Indian. He was ashamed of being Indian. And through the years, I lived with him not being proud to be Indian. And when I grew up and was about 12 or 13 years old, I realized that Indian people, many of my white friends would like to have been Indian. They wanted to be Indian. And I said, Daddy, I'm proud to be Indian. And so from that point on, I think he finally reached a point of being proud to be Indian. I graduated from Amarillo High School in 1953, and immediately in September went to Amarillo Junior College in Amarillo. And I went to college for a year there, and that's when I received an invitation to be an airline stewardess, and by a friend of mine who was already one. Interviewed for that and was hired, and flew to Dallas and met with Central Airlines and was hired. And
Central Airlines in Dallas?
we originated our flights from Dallas, Fort Worth, but we had our home base was in Meacham Field in Fort Worth, and we deadheaded from Meacham to Dallas to originate our flights. And then at that time, you could not be married and fly. Anyway, my flying years were fun.
I bet they were.
And I had a lot of incidents, one of which was one scary incident. And that is where we were flying and the landing gear wouldn't lock down. And it was a frightening thing. We flew around for 2 hours to get rid of fuel, and while they sprayed foam on the runway because we anticipated a forced landing, no wheels, and that causes friction that causes a fire. I had a captain whom I think was a marvelous flyer, and he had a co-pilot whose name was Dodd, and the captain always laughingly said, "Dodd is my co-pilot." Anyway, that particular day, the landing gear wouldn't come down, and I was a stewardess, and I was so frightened. Of course, we had been through training what to do in the case of an emergency landing, which we were prepared to do. I watched for 2 hours while we flew around burning up the fuel, and looking down and seeing the foam being spread and the ambulances appearing. I thought, I wrote my mother and daddy letters, which I still have in my files.
Aww.
And this captain, whose name was Brown, but everybody called him Brownie, said, "Let me try something." And he got permission from the ground, and he said, "Let me go in. We will manually pump the wheels down. They won't be locked, or they're not showing locked." He said, "Let me go in, and I will barely touch the wheels and then take off." And he did that, and it locked the wheels into locking.
Oh, good.
And so we landed, but when I walked off of the plane, my legs were going like this. And another time, I had about 48 little Boy Scouts that were taking some kind of a tour, and they wouldn't get off the plane until I kissed every one of them goodbye.
Well, you were a cutie. I've seen pictures.
And at that time, you couldn't be married. That was the rules. And be a stewardess. And so I guess married women had too many obligations, and they wanted free women to.
Yeah, they wanted women that were just at a free.
Oh,
okay, I got you.
And when I got married, I immediately was discharged. right after we moved to Spearman, I had four little children at that time. And it was in the wintertime, and each of the children caught something, one at a time. Chicken pox, measles, and after one would have it, the next one would have it. For the whole winter, I was involved with sick children, with sick children having measles and mumps and chicken pox. And it was during that time that I decided I wanted to be an interior decorator. And so I did at home business with the New York School of Interior Design and took classes of that and filled in and received a certification as an interior decorator. So I opened up a little interior decorating shop there in Spearman after my children got well and everything was back to normal. And I had later on opened another one in Perryton. I had two. It was.
So that first one was the Saks on 3rd Avenue Street.
First of all, I opened a decorating shop.
Okay.
And then I had friends. I had 5 friends that I called them over to my house one day and I said, why don't we open up a business so we could go to the Dallas market and have fun? And so each of us put in $500. And we had $2,500. And we went to Dallas, established a Saks 3rd Avenue, and went to Dallas and bought $2,500 worth of gift items. And we opened our business, we called it Saks 3rd Avenue, and in the first 3 months, we sold out of that, went back to Dallas. We did it 5 times.
Oh, that's cool.
We turned our inventory 5 different times and ended up with Saks 3rd Avenue. And it ended up, out of the 5 women, 2 of us ended up buying the others out, and we ended up having Saks 3rd Avenue, and I bought the old Brent building, an abandoned building in Spearman, and renovated it, and that's where Charlotte Pearson and I moved to with our Saks 3rd Avenue building.
Is that the building that kind of looked like a house, kind of? Was that the house that kind of looked like a big house?
No, it had a bright and early coffee sign painted on the side of it, and I redid it, and I've got pictures of it. After marrying Roy Bulls, he was transferred to Spearman, Texas, to start a new yard for Baker & Taylor Drilling Company. And it was during this period of time that I lived in Spearman for 25 years and did a lot of things helping Baker & Taylor and Roy with his job. Several things being starting a yard for them in Amistad, New Mexico, and Mosquero, New Mexico, and a ranch at CO2 in action in New Mexico. And I had a lot of experience there, decorating houses, redoing old buildings, and opening offices. And that was to help Roy in his business. Baker & Taylor had oil well drilling. CO2 in Action, Raised Drillers, and Sundance Exploration. And I haven't talked about Sundance Exploration, but it's part of Baker and Taylor, so I could tell about it right now.
Go on ahead.
Okay. Are you okay? Sundance Exploration was named after one of Max Taylor, the president and owner of Baker and Taylor. He named his son Sundance because he always admired Sundance, the cowboy Sundance. So he named his company Sundance Exploration, and that was where they would go in and drill. There would be little bubbles underneath the surface, kind of like a hill, and they would drill a hole down in there and explore for gas and oil. And they found on J. Taylor's ranch 13 little hills underground with their exploration, and made an oil field out of that. And they had 30 producing oil wells. And out of that, I loved, when they drilled the well, they would bring out samples of mud, and I took some of those samples of mud and molded it into a cup and put it in a kiln and fired it and gave it to J. Taylor as a present because it was dirt, clay, that came out of his well that made an oil well. And he was so excited about that. Okay. While living in Spearman, it was a farming ranch cattle community, and they weren't too proud to have oil well trash move in. And Baker and Taylor asked me to do everything I could to make the people of Spearman like the trash, oil field trash. So I organized what I named the Baker and Taylor Women's Auxiliary. And we met once a week and worked every week, and we would cut out wooden displays, Christmas type displays, and we decorated the Little League Park so that people could drive through and around the park, and we had it lit up with little birds and everything Christmas in the trees and the things around, so you could drive around the park and see a Christmas decoration. And also it got to the point that the town people loved the Baker and Taylor people. They were drilling a well outside of Spearman. And I don't know if you would know what lost circulation means in a drilling business, but that's where they were drilling down, and the water that they would have to pump down to keep the bits cool would go out into the formation, not let them make any distance depth to going. So they were losing what they call losing circulation. And Baker and Taylor asked me what they could do. They tried putting horsehair, rubber tire, everything in the world to plug up and stop the lost circulation, and they simply could not. They were losing $60,000 a day, losing circulation. And so I said, you know what was happening? Everything that they pumped down into the hole was going out into the formation. So they said, how can we, if you as a woman, how would you stop the circulation? And I said, you know what? I have a little shop, and we use muslin and make pillows and things. I would make a pillow 12 and a half inches in diameter, which is the size of the pipe that was drilling pipe was going down in. And I would make slender pillows. And I would fill it with the gel that sets up, and it's kind of like jelly. And I would drop those down in and hope that gel, it would hold it together to keep it from going out into this formation. So they tried that. I made dozens of little round pillows that were 36 inches deep. That's how wide the material was, out of muslin. And we fixed it with the hole open so they could put the gel down in the pillows and then tie it. And they dropped that down in, and surprisingly, it held the gel together and kept it from going out in the formation, and they gained their circulation.
That's awesome. That's genius.
So, I mean, I enjoyed that because that happened, and all the men, there were 5 vice presidents of Baker and Taylor Drilling Company. There was a vice president of drill managers. There was I can't remember, landman, all the 5 different men. And it was so funny that Mr. Banks, who was the owner of Baker and Taylor, said, "You guys didn't come up all that time and didn't come up with what a woman did." And
That's funny.
Well, in New York, my daughter, Tracy, had moved up there and was working there. And I decided that I wanted to have a permanent showroom in New York. So I went up and visited Tracy and went down and visited the showroom at 225 Fifth Avenue, which has a lot of showrooms in New York. Mm-hmm. And I went around and I said, I have a business that I want to have a showroom and representative up here. Silverman and Silverman was a company in New York that had a showroom. They said, we'll take your business. We'll represent you. So I fixed them some samples and sent them to them. About 3 months later, I got a call from Silverman. They said, Spiegel Catalog wants you to make up 4 samples of these little boxes, covered boxes. All we did is covered some boxes with fabric, and so I made 4 boxes, and I thought, Spiegel Catalog's not going to buy these. Mm-hmm. I did 4 boxes. One was a daffodil. Sophie, those silk screens that I've got in there. Okay. I did a rose, a tulip, a daisy, and a bluebell. Mm-hmm. And I made up those samples and sent them to New York. And I thought, there's no way they're going to buy those. They called me back and said, this is Spiegel Catalog, and we like your deals. How can you package these? And I told them we could package them individually or as a set. And so I sent them samples of those 3 ways of packaging them. Mm-hmm. 1 of each, or a set of 4. And I told them how they would be, how I could ship them and how I could sell them. Mm-hmm. They called me back in about two weeks, and said, we're letting you know, since you're brand new with us, we're letting you know we're placing an order with you. We want, I've forgotten how many, 100 these, 100 this, 100 this. Mm-hmm. And I called my husband, and I said, Roy, they ordered.
You got the Bluebell and what else?
Yeah, two. And I said, you know, I have saved those because I made up those. I didn't even know how to silk screen, and I learned real quick.
And so these were printed on the boxes?
Uh-huh. Okay. And so I said, they have ordered $1,100. And Roy said, Charlene, you don't know your math. That's $11,000. They ordered $11,000 the first week. I sent them to them. They put them in their catalog. They sold out.
Oh, cool.
5 weeks in a row, they reordered those same things. They ended up buying $87,000 worth of those little boxes.
Wow. You never expected that to happen, did you? Not a million. I've been like, were you
Isn't that funny? I said, they've ordered $1,100.
You're excited about that. There was more.
And he said, Charlene, that's $11,000.
Wow.
That was so funny. I would like to tell you a little bit about the Choctaw people. My family was moved from Mississippi and into Indian Territory, and they were the first of the 5 civilized tribes to be moved by what is known now as the Trail of Tears. The Indian people, the Choctaw people, were told they would be moved, and they would be helped to be moved. And it started, the first removal of 3 started in the winter of 1831. And they came and gathered the Indian people, and they said, if you will, just leave your family, leave everything here. You will be furnished food and clothing, and when you get to Indian Territory, you will be furnished a knife, gun, and a place to live, and you will be taken care of, which did not really happen that nice. It was winter, and immediately the Choctaw people were loaded up, and there were about 2,000 of them that started on the first trail of March. And the very first thing that happened was that it started snowing and sleeting and raining, and the wagons sunk and got stuck. So the Indian people were forced to start walking, and they walked for about a month, and daily were given. They ran out of food. They were daily furnished a cup of water and a turnip for days. And of the 2,000 people, many of them didn't survive. They died along the way, and it was called the Trail of Tears.
I bet that was harsh. I bet that whole situation was harsh.
It was very.
I bet it was gruesome.
And they finally got there. Well, the second part of the trip, they had boats that were going to come help them the rest of the way. They got to about Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas, and they were going to be furnished boats to ride in. Well, they were on their butt. They got sick because the people there had, I keep wanting to say red fever, scarlet fever. And many of the Indian people got the scarlet fever and died. So it ended up that they finally made it to Indian Territory. and kind of settled in. The next phase of removal was in started out 31, then the next year was 1821, and then the final move was, what would 3 years be? 18.
You said 1821, so it'll be 1824.
No, it was 31 to.
34, sorry.
Yeah. So, now, your question is, how did your father and your mother meet? Well, when they moved the Indian people, my family, it was moved to Oklahoma to a place that they called Chocktaw. And many of the Indian towns in Oklahoma were named by Indian Choctaw names. And that was called Chocktaw. And Chocktaw means creek runs deep. They started a school there. It was called Armstrong Academy, and my father was moved to the Armstrong into an orphanage there in 1831, and my mother's parents lived in a farming community around there, and so consequently it was easy for them to have met, through school activities or whatever, and that's where my parents met. I can trace my Indian heritage, Choctaw heritage, back to 1750, and there was a trader that named Turner Brashears Turnbull, and he traded with at that time it was called, he was trading with the Chickasaw tribe. And the funny thing about it is, it was not unusual for the traders to have a white wife that they were really married to, but to have an Indian wife from the community where they were trading. So Turner Turnbull had 3 children by the chief's daughter. So and each of those children then were half Chickasaw and half white. He acknowledged in his will and left those children money and acknowledged that he was the father of those 3 children. Each of those children then married full-blood Choctaw people because they were among the Choctaw people. Consequently, they became half Choctaw and half Chickasaw. Those children then still were among Choctaw people, and they married full-blood Choctaw Indian people. Consequently, then, they became 75% Choctaw and 25% Chickasaw. The rule was, whatever your most largest percentage of is what you were labeled as. So consequently, they became full-blood Choctaw people. So that's how our family evolved into being Choctaws.
And was that Turnbull? Was he from Scottish descent? Because it seems like Dad talked about we have descent, and I thought he said Turnbull was our Scottish ancestry.
Scottish,
Yes.
Scottish and Irish. Yes.
Okay.
They had a trade. He and his brothers had trading companies that they started.
But they were
They were white people.
And he was so his family probably came like back
Right.
From Scottish or Ireland?
Right.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So the removal of the Choctaw people from Mississippi was over a 3-year period. And because so many people died along the trail, froze to death or starved to death, or died of scarlet fever, the chief named it the Trail of Tears. He said every place that a tear fell, a stalk of corn grew. So he called it the Trail of Tears. And actually, the Cherokee people are more known for as the Trail of Tears March, but actually the Choctaw people were the ones that began the Trail of Tears March.
When it comes to saging, what are the steps when it comes to saging? What's the process?
The process of, first of all, one who sages should be head of the household or an elder, and the process is simply getting the sage stick, getting it lit and smoldering, and you have to blow on it, to keep it smoldering. And then the thing is to tap the person, not tap, but indicate who you're blessing or asking the blessing for, and simply say a prayer for that person as you're doing that. And those are basically the steps, and then you assume the smoke will carry the blessing to the Great Spirit.
That's incredible. And that's the whole reason of the smoke.
Indians refer to God as the Great Spirit, the Creator, and Grandfather.